Now to the U.S. in the race to win the White House. Republican hopeful Nikki Haley is wooing voters in New Hampshire this week as she seeks to keep her bid for the Republican presidential nomination on track. On Monday, Haley finished third behind Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in the Iowa Caucus. Both finished far behind the runaway frontrunner Donald Trump. Well, the next contest, the New Hampshire primary next Tuesday. Now, the primary is seen as make or break for Haley, who has tried to make the Republican race a choice of two between herself and Donald Trump. But the polls show her with a double-digit deficit behind the former U.S. president. Whoever wins the Republican nomination will almost certainly face off against the incumbent U.S. President Joe Biden. At the age of 81, he's the oldest president in U.S. history, and he'll have to convince voters of all ages that he has the stamina for another 4 years in office. So far, younger voters remain rather unconvinced. We'll examine their role in this election in just a moment. But first, here's Biden speaking earlier today in the state of North Carolina.
And folks, I'm here today to talk about something that doesn't get enough attention. And that's the progress we're making to invest in America, all of America. You know, there's a law written back in the 30s that says when the Congress passes a bill that has money in it to be spent to build something in America, whether it's an aircraft carrier or it's a highway or whatever it happens to be, that the president should use American workers and American products. For the longest time, Democrats and Republican presidents didn't abide by that very much. But I do, because I want to make sure that we're making it in America, building in America with American products, and that's why we've created 14 million new jobs.
Well, when Joe Biden beat Donald Trump back in 2020, young voters played an important role. Figures from the Pew Research Center show that 58% of people born between 1996 and 2002, known as Generation Z or Generation Z, they voted for Biden. Only 38% voted for Trump. Recent numbers from the Institute of Politics at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government show that young voters tend more towards Joe Biden this year, but for a variety of reasons, less than half of Generation Z voters say that they are going to go to the polls at all. Well, I'll bring in now Lindsey Drath in Washington, D.C. She's the CEO of the Forward Party, which is a centrist political party currently working towards gaining electoral access in all 50 states. Lindsey, it's good to have you with us. The primary season is underway at the moment. It's all about Democrats and Republicans, as you know. Are you feeling, well, more than a little left out?
Hi, how are you? Thrilled to be here with you. I don't think I'm alone in feeling left out. I think that's why we're seeing those disenfranchised numbers amongst Gen Z right now. They're not alone. You've got 46% of Americans right now self-identifying as independents. Folks are leaving the two legacy parties in droves, and those numbers are even higher amongst Gen Z. As you said, I'm here launching a new political party in the United States of America. I am nothing if not an optimist. I have to be in order to do this work. But if young voters in America feel that their vote doesn't count, sadly, it's because the reality of our system is that it doesn't. Even in states where independents can vote in our primaries, you've got gerrymandering that's ensured that the overwhelming majority of elections are decided well before the general. So more than half of the population in the United States doesn't really have a say in who represents them. Yeah,
I mean, I would definitely go on record saying you're probably one of the most overworked and underappreciated people in the United States right now. So, here's to you for trying to put another party on the ballot. But let's talk about where we are right now. At the end of this primary season, we're going to end up probably with the general election pitting two men who are both around 80 years of age against each other. Now, is that the reason Gen Z voters say they will not be flocking to the polls this year?
I think that right now, when we're talking about November in the presidential election, we're talking about one date and we're talking about two white men who are not, they do not feel relevant to young people across the country. What we're not talking about is the 520,000 seats for elected office that are all across the country, where individuals are representing folks in their own community and really working on issues that impact Americans' lives on a daily basis. Just last week, it was really exciting. We are seeing the first ever all women city council sworn in St. Paul, Minnesota, and they are broadly representative of communities of color. These are the sorts of stories that I think give us hope as Americans, and what I hope will drive people to the polls, not just in November, but during their primaries too. We've got Super Tuesday coming up on March 5th. We've got hugely important states like North Carolina on March 5th. You've got Pennsylvania on April 23rd. And you're going to have folks that are representing people in their own communities on those primary ballots. And I hope folks will come out and support them.
Let me ask you, though, do you think Gen Z is concerned so much that these are two white men, or more concerned with the fact that these are two people who could easily be Gen Z's grandfathers or great-grandfathers? Isn't it age here that is really the issue for young voters?
I think it's relevancy. I think you could see someone who was of an older generation who is relevant to the issues that are impacting Americans in their own backyards, who are solutions oriented, who are committed to getting things done. I think that generationally an older candidate could still resonate with a younger voter. The problem is the rhetoric and the political dog whistles that the two parties continue to espouse are not resonating with a generation who's looking for hope and change.
Maybe, too, if we look beyond the age issue with younger voters, maybe a bigger question is how do you get moderate Americans motivated over politics? I mean, how do you get them to shift away from this polarizing, performative politics that has become such a hallmark of the more extreme Republican wing in recent years? I mean, how do you do that?
Yeah, I think, again, it goes back to our communities. It goes back to running people in folks' backyard where you're able to address the things that really matter to American voters. Jobs, education, healthcare, cost of living, affordable housing. These are all things right now that at the top of the ticket, Americans aren't seeing candidates taking these issues seriously. They're not seeing what's resonant in their own communities. And the more we're able to see fantastic candidates who are running for city council, mayor, state legislator, who are addressing these real issues and taking them on in ways that are innovative, I do think you're going to see excitement. I do think you're going to have independent-minded voters turn out to support those candidates. And turnout is important. We want folks to turn out. We want folks to vote. But obviously, as you've said, the top of the ticket is not going to motivate them.
Lindsey, if you've got all of these, and I'll grant you've got all of these qualified, motivated local politicians across the United States, if that's the case, then why in a country of 300 million people do we not have anything new to choose from when it comes to the president? Would you say here that the biggest threat to American democracy as we know it right now is maybe not Donald Trump or Joe Biden or their age, but maybe the actual political party apparatus that we have?
100% agree. The 520,000 seats that I referenced, actually, that's not representative of candidates. It's the seats themselves. And of those 520,000 positions of elected office, 70% of them go uncontested, which means you have people who are sitting in positions of elected office who, again, don't represent the interests of the people, and in large part because you have one party control in those communities. So no one even thinks that there's an opportunity to go and compete. There's a lack of competition up and down the ballot, and that is by design. That is by design of the two-party system. They have done an excellent job kind of pulling up the ladder behind them once they get into positions of power, whether it's closed party primaries, gerrymandered districts. These are all things that have been designed by the two-party system to lock out competition. And none of this is mandated in the Constitution. We as Americans have a great tradition of innovation and the ability to change these things. It's a matter of folks showing up and getting engaged in their own communities, and we can really see that change that everybody's looking for.
Well, you've got a big job ahead of you, and if they're pulling the ladders up behind them, I'm sure that you are going to find a way to put a new ladder up to bring a third party in. Lindsey Williams-Drath, the CEO of the Forward Party. Lindsey, we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.